They filmed inside an abandoned Masonic temple. Every view made it stronger. There's a kind of courage that looks exactly like recklessness. 4 young people with cameras entering a building they shouldn't, reading words aloud that they don't understand, posting the results for strangers to consume. This is how a great deal of modern horror begins, with the particular confidence of those who have been told their whole lives that the world is knowable, quantifiable, explicable by daylight and good sense. The 1920s Masonic Temple on Calloway Street had been untouched for 67 years when they entered it. No vandalism. No weather damage that couldn't be explained. No evidence that anyone at all, had gone in or come out since 1958. The candles were still burning. That detail deserves a pause, I think. Not an excuse. A pause. Because the moment those 4 young people saw the still burning candles and continued inside, the ritual they were about to interrupt was already noting their arrival. It was not alarmed by them, it was pleased. Mass attention was exactly what it had been waiting for. The channel was called Hollow Places, and it had 340,000 subscribers on the evening of December 14th, when its 4 creators, Rena, Dom, Suki, and Marcus, drove a rented van through downtown Harrisburg and stopped in front of a building on Calloway Street that had been locked and shuttered since Dwight Eisenhower was president. They had found it, as they found most of their locations, through a combination of property records, local historian interviews, and the particular informal network of urban explorers who trade information in private Discord servers. The Calloway Street Temple had come with 2 unusual pieces of supplementary information that they had briefly discussed and then set aside because they made for poor content planning. The first was that the city's records contain no documentation of the temple ever having been formally decommissioned or its contents removed. The second was that 3 separate sources, unprompted and over a span of 20 years, had noted that the building didn't feel empty. This was, Dom had pointed out, exactly what you said about every good exploration location. They were not wrong to say it. They were not fools. They were simply and precisely wrong about what kind of not empty they were dealing with. The front door's padlock yielded to a bolt cutter in one clean pull. The lobby was intact. Marble floor, paneled walls, brass fixtures gone green, a coat check window with the tags still hanging. The air was not stale. It had a quality they all noticed independently and none of them mentioned until the edit. When Dom's camera captured Rena slowing at the threshold of the main hall and simply standing there for a moment, breathing, before she turned and looked at the camera and said, "It smells like something's still happening in here." The main hall was exactly what a Masonic temple of the 1920s would contain. Tiered seating, carved woodwork, ceremonial dais. But centered on the floor, in what should have been an open walking space, was a ritual circle of extraordinary precision. 8 feet in diameter, inscribed directly into the marble in lines so fine they appeared to have been made with a tool designed for this specific purpose. Inside the circle, a 7-pointed figure, each point containing a symbol that none of the 4 explorers recognized. 12 black pillar candles, burning. Marcus filmed the candles first, a slow close-up pan that would later become, along with 3 specific seconds in the final footage, the most screenshotted image the channel ever produced. The candles were not fresh. Their surfaces were layered with the melted topography of many previous iterations, stalactites of old wax fused to the floor, but their flames were steady and tall and showed no sign of diminishing. "Okay," Rena said, looking at the camera with an expression that was trying to be amusement and landing somewhere slightly to the left of it. "So somebody's been keeping the vibe alive." On the dais, they found the text. It was inscribed on a wooden lectern, 2 columns of Latin printed in a typeface that had been routed into the wool with extraordinary care, the letters filled with a substance that had dried to a deep, almost black red. The language was not Masonic. Rena, who had a degree in comparative religion that she deployed primarily as a party trick, photographed the text and identified it immediately as classical Latin, with several insertions she called irregular diction. Dom read the first 2 lines aloud, phonetically, and the echo it produced in the hall had a texture they all noticed, a resonance that seemed to arrive from the wrong direction, as though the sound were returning from below rather than from the walls. "Read it properly," Marcus said. He had a steady voice and was, of all of them, the least easily unsettled. "Just read it like a sentence." Rena read it properly. Suki filmed the candles during the reading. Afterward, she would be the first to notice that the flames in her footage do not move during Rena's recitation, not even the minute, near-invisible quiver that candlelight maintains even in still air. They simply hold, fixed, as though paused. They uploaded the video 11 days later, after editing, at 7:44 p.m. on a Tuesday, with the title, "We found a secret Masonic ritual room. Candles still lit?" By midnight, it had 80,000 views. By the following morning, 400,000. By the end of the week, 11 million. The first reported dream came 3 days after the upload. A viewer named Theo from Glasgow posted in the comments, "I don't know if this is the right place to put this, but I had a dream that night after watching where 4 hooded figures stood at the foot of my bed at exactly 3:33 a.m. and just stood there until I woke up. Absolutely no threat, just present. Anyone else?" The comment received 14,000 replies within 6 hours. Almost all of them yes. The entity, or more precisely, the coven of 4 entities that had completed the Calloway Street ritual in 1958 and achieved what the inscribed text called observational anchoring, had been, for 67 years, maintaining the circle in a state of perfect suspension. The observational anchoring ritual does not summon entities through force or invitation. It creates a condition in which the entities exist simultaneously, both in the location of the ritual and in the perceptual space of anyone who observes the location through any medium. In 1958, with no recording technology present, the anchor's range had been limited to the 4 walls of the hall. The coven had been waiting. Every view of the footage extended the anchor by a specific calculable increment. At 11 million views, the observational field now encompassed every device on which the video had been fully watched. At 40 million, the view count at the end of the second month, the anchor was effectively global. The hooded figures in the dreams were not threatening because they were not threatening. They did not need to be. They needed only to be seen. It was Dom who first noticed them in the footage. 3 weeks after the upload, deep in a comment spiral about the dream reports, he rewatched the video in the edit suite at 1 a.m. and saw what 11 million people had not yet noticed. In the background of the shot where Rena reads the Latin, at the very edge of the frame, 4 hooded figures stand in the shadows of the tiered seating. They were not visible in any of his recollections of the footage. He went back to the raw file. They were there too. He cross-referenced every camera angle. They appeared in Suki's footage at a different position, in Marcus's footage at a third. They were not in the same place in each frame. They had moved between shots. They were not looking at the ritual. They were looking at the cameras. Dom called Rena at 1:18 a.m. and she watched the raw footage on her laptop with her bedroom lights on and her boyfriend asleep 3 feet away. And when she paused on the frame where the nearest figure's face was almost, but not quite visible in the shadow of its hood, she felt with total certainty, no rational basis, no logical scaffold, pure animal certainty, that the figure was looking back at her through the screen with a quality of recognition that suggested it had known, for 67 years, that this moment was coming. She made the second video at 4 a.m., titled it, "Urgent, do not watch our Calloway Street video. Please read this first." She explained everything. She was coherent and calm and specific, and she included timestamps and screenshots of the figures in the footage. She asked people to stop watching. She explained the dream reports. She explained what she believed the ritual circle was doing. She uploaded it at 4:47 a.m. By 6 a.m., it had 200,000 views. By noon, 2 million. The comments section of the second video filled over the course of that day with a particular quality of attention that horror online always generates. Disbelief, excitement, analysis, mockery, genuine fear that quickly became indistinguishable from performed fear. And at the very bottom, in real time, the comment that Rena would screenshot and that would itself be widely shared. Too late, too late, too late, too late, too late, too late. Posted by an account created that morning, username a string of numbers identical in format to the one that had responded to Alex Varro's forum post several hundred miles away and several months later, which was a coincidence that no one had yet assembled into a pattern. The video continued to accumulate views. The figures in the Calloway Street footage continued to face the cameras. That night, in the dreams of 42 million people, 4 hooded figures stood at the foot of 400 beds on 6 continents and stood very still in the dark and were simply and completely and utterly present, requiring nothing, taking nothing, needing only to be seen. And every one of those dreamers, upon waking, would open their phone and watch it again. Every view makes it stronger. What haunts me about this story isn't the coven or the 67 years of preparation or even the extraordinary patience of entities that waited in an empty building tending 12 candles for most of the 20th century. What haunts me is that the ritual was designed for exactly this moment. Not this specific video, not these specific 4 people, but this era, the era of mass attention, of content that spreads to millions before anyone can consider whether spreading it is wise. They achieved their anchor in 1958 with no audience at all. They simply waited for one to exist. for the tools to arrive that would let 4 curious people with cameras walk through a door and read words aloud and post the result to 11 million people in 11 days. The coven is not malevolent in any way we have good language for. The hooded figures in those dreams did not threaten anyone. They simply stood. They simply watched. They require only one thing, what all ancient things of this kind require, which is the acknowledgement of their presence, to be seen, to be real in the perceptual field of the living. And we have built them the most extraordinary infrastructure for that. Dom's warning video was the kindest and most futile thing he could have done. You cannot unsummon a thing that feeds on the act of watching. By asking people to watch, you tell them to stop watching. 42 million people dreamed of them that first night. If you find this channel, this story, this voice in the dark, and you have watched from the beginning, I want you to sit for a moment with the fact that watching is the mechanism. That attention is the fuel. The candles in the Calloway Street temple are still burning. They always were. Thank you for joining me tonight. My name is Alara, and I am your whisperer. I'll be here, waiting for you next time. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment below. I want to hear your stories. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this story and want to hear more. This has been Karma Quietly Whispers. See you soon.